Monday, and that means it's time for us to kick off the week, a brand new week, and hey, a brand new studio for Mansfield today. Welcome to our new studios. The finance, as usual, brought to you by Capital Legacy, your number one provider of wills and estate administration. Chris Gibbons is the lucky bugger, probably sweating himself to death in Kruger. But you know what? It comes with the territory. And quite honestly, I'd rather be in Kruger. But on with the business. And standing in for Chris Gibbons is Chris Buchanan. Nice to have you on the show once again, Chris. Listen, let's start off with the cryptocurrency side of things. I've been watching Bitcoin. Last week at one stage, am I correct in saying it nearly hit something around about $67,000?
$68,643 to be precise, Jeremy. Over R1,000,000 a coin at current exchange rates. Bearing in mind, this time last year, one coin would have cost you $16,000. What we need to remember is that it's no steady uphill gain. In April, it hit a high of $63,000, but 3 months later was down to $30,000. Volatility, the name of the game here. Now, there are a number of factors driving the price of cryptocurrencies at the moment. Most significant, the launch of the first Bitcoin-linked exchange-traded fund, the ProShares Bitcoin Strategy ETF, which tracks Bitcoin future more than $1.2 billion in volume on its debut. So Bitcoin and its crypto cousins, Ethereum, Solana, has reached a combined market cap of over $3 trillion US. That's 10 times the size of South Africa's GDP.
Wowza. Where do you reckon that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are going, Chris?
Well, given the volatility, Jeremy, it's anyone's guess. The problems lie essentially in the lack of regulation, which on the one hand is attractive to investors because it sneaks under the radar in terms of taxation and other regulatory structures that govern traditional investments. On the other hand, it's craving legitimacy among regulated markets. So more regulation will probably benefit the sector and provide more stability as cryptos are incorporated into the mainstream and accepted as legal tender by an increasing number of organizations. PayPal in Britain recently announcing acceptance of certain cryptos.
I find it interesting that somebody like Elon Musk can single-handedly affect things like cryptocurrencies, like the Tesla share price, all through Twitter.
And he's not the only one who's used the platform to send shivers through the markets. You'll remember Monday mornings after Donald Trump attacked Chinese trade policies in his Sunday night tweets that sent Asian markets into turmoil. And I wonder if there are a few phone calls to investor connections to get ready to short markets, guys. I'm going to threaten the Chinese with tariff hikes on Twitter. Elon Musk has over 62 million followers on that platform, so his messages get around. And he has more than once attracted the attention of regulators through some of the consequences of his tweets. Most infamous in August 2018, saying he was considering taking Tesla private at $420, funding secured. It cost both Musk and Tesla $20 million US in fines and him having to step down as chairman for 3 years. It pushed the Tesla share price up 11%, turned out to be an obscure cannabis reference to the 420 movement. Well, last week, he asked his Twitter base whether he should sell 10% of his shares in Tesla, 56 or 58%, and Tesla's share price tumbled over 7%. He ended up selling $1.1 billion US worth, but unrelated to the tweet and part of a tax obligation on Tesla share options. His crypto tweets have pushed Bitcoin up over 10% at times, particularly in April this year when he suggested Tesla will reconsider taking his currency or taking the currency for his vehicles as long as the Bitcoin miners were using clean energy.
Let's go back to the medium-term budget presented last week. Chris, any significant changes, or is it really just more of the same?
A little bit of both, to be honest. More of the same, because there's very little room to maneuver with current levels of debt and expenditure. Commitment to tighter fiscal discipline outlined in the February budget. The biggest change was a tax windfall of 120 billion rand, thanks to higher commodity prices and better earnings out of the miners, taking total revenue collections close to 1.5 trillion rand for this fiscal year. Enoch Godongwana saying the money will be used to service debt, reduce the budget deficit, and finance the extension of the social relief grant to March 2022. Also, a change in sentiment toward the social basic income grant. The minister made it clear he's not a fan of basic income grants, saying it keeps people away from work. 28 million people, or 46% of the population, are social grant recipients. So there'll be a revised social grant framework presented in the February 2022 budget.
How much money did people like Eskom, SAA, the other beleaguered state enterprises get out of this?
Well, Jeremy, they didn't walk out of the room with any of the little cash that there was around, but it could be argued the other way, a bit like sugarcoating blackouts to call them load shedding, because the commitment came from Godongwana to honour debt redemptions in the form of bond coupons, maturities, and loan repayments, which total 73.4 billion rand a year across all SOEs. 23 billion rand for Eskom alone. So they will get money, just no direct handout.
What are we looking at here from a ratings agency point of view? Once they've had time to assess this, what's their reaction going to be, do you reckon?
Well, the fiscal situation is not very different to the past 8 months, apart from a few small revisions which are on the right side of pleasing the likes of Fitch, Moody's, S&P, such as a revised debt ratio to 70% of GDP from 74%, and a revised GDP growth rate of 5.1% from 3.3%. The agencies will be watching the debt burden, now just over 4 trillion rand, with servicing costs alone of 1 trillion rand on the medium term. The upshot of that being critical services spending takes a back seat, and those reforms that create a pathway to growth, prosperity, employment, just not happening as fast as is needed in the economy. 2 takeaways worth mentioning. First, the huge salary bill and the commitment to free salary increases, a decision currently with the Constitutional Court, and that there's no capacity in the budget for the national health insurance.
It seems Gwede Mantashe is at it again. I see he's putting all his chips on coal as the continuing solution for the energy debate.
I'm not sure if you saw Rico's cartoon in Daily Maverick last week, Jeremy, but it had the Minerals and Energy Minister sitting on a throne made of a pile of coal, 2 billowing chimney stacks as the chair back, with the caption, "Old King Coal," like the nursery rhyme, but coal as in burning coal, and some clever lyrics based on the nursery rhyme. He was talking to the African Energy Week and basically said African nations should not be coerced and should resist global pressure to abandon fossil fuels. He said cutting finance for fossil fuels is a mistake, and reiterated support for a combination of technologies to reach net zero targets, including carbon capture for coal, nuclear and natural gas. His Deputy Director General, Ntokozo, I beg your pardon, Kobani, slammed what she called financial bullying by funders who refused to finance projects and said, and I quote, "We'll breathe clean air, but we'll breathe it in darkness."
And this while we were finalising all sorts of bits and pieces at COP26 in Glasgow.
Yes, Jeremy, COP26 talked to an end over the week with South Africa securing 130 billion rand in a concessional climate finance green deal with the US, Germany, the UK, France, and the European Union. That's following their envoys' visits to the country a few weeks ago. There are a few details as to the what, how, when, but RMB CEO James Formby reckons this initial commitment could unlock considerably more in local and foreign private investment capital in the region of 390 billion rand.
What about those talks? Was there any sort of agreement reached on them, and any on not just the talks but also on emissions targets?
Well, it's been called COP out instead of COP26 after the final agreement was approved with China and India, the world's largest users of coal for energy, insisting a rewording about coal from phasing to phasing down, which will please our Minerals and Energy Minister. Vulnerable island nations expressed disappointment that the final deal, which kept the 1.5 degree target in sight in line with Paris Agreement, but which they say is not enough to stop the effects of climate change, bearing in mind it's the vulnerable, poorer nations that are harder hit, both socially and economically.
And in the meantime, we've had a series of blackouts and calls for Eskom CEO to resign.
Well, as we jumped from stage 2 to stage 4, calls came from the Black Business National Union of Mine Workers for Andre de Ruyter to step down as CEO, saying in his 2-year tenure at the top, things have gone from bad to worse. His response was interesting, to say the least, comparing Eskom to a dead horse, saying there's no point in changing the jockey on a dead horse. Now, we all knew that Eskom was broken, but that kind of talk coming from the CEO does not inspire any confidence that they're getting to grips with the problem. Add to that debt financing costs of 31 billion rand and an operating loss of 19 billion rand for the 2020-21 financial year. He probably has a point.
Let's look at the week ahead, Chris, hopefully with no blackouts, but a looming interest rate hike.
That's right, Jeremy. It's all linked to the upward inflation pressure that's been looming for some time. COVID-19 is the underlying reason, which saw the oil price around $40 a barrel this time last year, and demand for consumer goods and services down to a trickle because of lockdown, etc. As we get back to a semblance of normality, increased demand means an increase in prices. And while the oil price has almost doubled, so too does the cost associated with transportation. The US last week reported its highest inflation number in 30 years, breaching the 6% mark. We're sitting at 5%, with the forecast for October inflation at 5.1%. Those numbers due out on Wednesday this week. So the speculation is that Monetary Policy Committee of the Reserve Bank is likely to announce a 0.25 percentage point rise in the repo rate on Thursday. That's the first policy tightening we've seen in 3 years.
So if that is the case, Chris, what are the markets going to be telling us?
This is where we look either in isolation or as part of a global economy. At home, higher interest rates hit the consumer, particularly those with debt in the case of home loans, vehicle finance, credit cards, and the like. Remember, Reserve Bank Governor Letsetja eased interest rates during the pandemic to offer relief to the man in the street. It also puts pressure on bond yields, increasing borrowings at corporation and government level. As far as the rand's concerned, higher rates mean the currency becomes more attractive as an investment alongside its peers, so it should be stronger. Within the global scenario, rates are likely to be on an upward trajectory all round, well into the first half of 2022. So that cancels out the possible gains in the currency. The real problem emerges when inflation continues to rise through sustained supply chain issues, higher food prices, oil prices, and energy prices. Monetary policy has very little room to move outside of interest rate adjustments. So hold on to your hats. All that credit and borrowing is going to start costing you a lot more next year.
Chris Buchanan, the financial journalist from Chris Buchanan Media, thank you very much for stepping into the breach and coming in to Mansfield today to help us out while Chris Gibbons is away. That's it from us from today, courtesy of Capital Legacy, your #1 provider of wills and estate administration. We'll be back tomorrow with The Legal Show with Advocate Lance Brogden. Thank you very much for watching, and until then, bye-bye.